In its efforts to bring Queensland's budget back into the black, the state government has identified programs it believes doubles up on services. The Tenant Advisory and Advocacy Service had its funding removed late last year before the federal government stepped in with a one-off payment. Now that money is about to run out and the service says tenants will be left in the lurch. James Kelly reports.
Like 1/3 of Queenslanders, university lecturer Lucinda Aberdeen rents her home. But 12 months ago, after a disagreement with her landlord, she joined the tens of thousands of tenants each year who face eviction or worse.
Without the service, I would have been homeless.
She says she faced eviction after raising concerns about asbestos in a privately rented Brisbane house last year.
I didn't have anywhere to move to. As a result of being able to take the matter initially to the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal with the help of the Tenants Union, I was able to get the lessor through the property manager to negotiate and give me an extra 6 months of accommodation at that property.
Oh, there it is.
The union says the service helped 80,000 renters in 2011-2012.
All right, so if I do that subsection, then I'll need to ring and clarify that with them, do you think?
Yeah.
The service was funded to provide free information, advice and advocacy to people who had concerns over accommodation laws. But last year the money dried up, reallocated by the state government.
The whole sector was absolutely stunned. We didn't see it coming. We got a fax on the 24th of July last year. The TAS money really, it's money generated on tenants' own bonds. It goes to fund services that predominantly are provided to people in the private rental market to keep them funded, to keep them housed independently.
The minister says the funds were redirected to public housing to help put roofs over the heads of more than 20,000 families on the public housing waiting list.
It was around $6 million. We believe it's really important that there's tenancy advice, but we believe that TAS services were a duplication of services that were already available.
Tim Manders says the state-run Residential Tenancies Authority provides the same information.
The RTA last year dealt with over 350,000 inquiries. Nobody knows tenancy law better than the RTA. Not only do they provide advice, they also provide a conciliation process as well, where they try to get resolution between the tenant and the landlord.
Lucinda Aberdeen says she went to the RTA in the first instance.
I found that very inadequate. I found the mediator was not well trained and I never got to speak directly to the property manager or the lessor, and the information came, the finding came back saying that the decision stands, you are to leave by such and such a date.
It's definitely not a duplicated service. The Residential Tenancies Authority gives information about what the laws say to all parties, and they also make sure people comply with the law. So they do a whole range of different things, but they certainly do not give advice or advocate on the behalf of the interests of tenants in Queensland, and that's what's going to be lost.
But if people do need legal advice, they can get access to that legal advice through community legal centres.
In 2012, ACOS research showed that 73% of Australian community legal centres were turning away clients because they just didn't have the resources and capacity to provide support. With additional thousands of Queenslanders coming to community legal centres looking for legal advice and representation, there's just no way that the community legal sector can provide a safety net for people in legal crisis, including vulnerable tenants.
After the state government funding ceased, the federal government stepped in with a one-off payment, but that runs out at the end of June.
We'll be left with a very, very small amount of money. We'll be looking at probably going back to where we were in the late 80s, delivering some kind of service, possibly using volunteers.
The union's concerns come on top of Anglicare's latest report on rental affordability. Almost 8,000 advertised properties were looked at in Brisbane and central Queensland. The median house rent in Gladstone was $600 a week, $550 for units.
There was absolutely nothing available for single people on government benefits, and couples didn't fare a lot better. In fact, even couples who were both on a full-time minimum wage, there was actually very little available, with only 5% available in the central Queensland area and about 10% available in Brisbane.
Casey Chambers says many people feel forced to pay higher rents and many will struggle to stay in their rented homes.
People are actually making choices to go without food. We found that a number of adults on New Start were actually going without food for up to a full day a week. We are calling on the government to raise those benefits.
Penny Carr says renters will do it even tougher if the tenant advice and advocacy service disappears. She hopes the federal government will again step in or force Queensland to fund the service. You won't be reinstating the TAS funding?
No, we made that decision last year and that decision will still stand.
I think we'll end up with people falling into homeless more easily, and there will increase demand on social housing, and that's the opposite of what the government is trying to do.
I'm tertiary educated, I had access to resources, I know how to advocate for myself, and even with all that, I stood to become homeless without the assistance of the Tenants Union.